In the sweltering haze of August 20, 1945, Apra Harbor in Guam shimmered under a relentless Pacific sun. The air hung heavy with the tang of salt and diesel fumes from the idling engines of the American transport ship. Waves lapped rhythmically against the hull, a steady pulse echoing the hushed tension among the nearly 300 Japanese women clustered on deck. Their khaki uniforms, faded and threadbare from years of wartime scarcity, clung to their slight frames. The scent of unwashed bodies mingled with the faint, acrid residue of gunpowder from distant battles now silenced. Eyes downcast, hands clasped tightly, they awaited their fate as prisoners of war, the first light of dawn casting long shadows across their faces, etched with exhaustion and unspoken dread. This moment marked the fragile dawn after Japan's unconditional surrender, announced just days earlier by Emperor Hirohito's voice crackling over radios across the empire. The war in the Pacific, a brutal saga that had claimed millions of lives since Pearl Harbor in 1941, had ended not with triumphant conquest, but with atomic devastation over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Amid the ruins, Allied forces moved swiftly to secure prisoners, including these women nurses, radio operators, and auxiliaries who had served in remote outposts on islands like Saipan, Okinawa, and the Philippines. Captured in the war's final throes, or rounded up post-surrender, they represented a rare cohort in a conflict where Japanese soldiers were indoctrinated to fight to the death rather than yield. Historical records from the U.S. War Department indicate that only about 5,000 Japanese prisoners were taken throughout the war, a fraction compared to the hundreds of thousands of German and Italian POWs, due to the Bushido Code that equated capture with dishonor. For these women, the voyage across the ocean was not just a physical translocation, but a pivotal intersection where imperial propaganda collided with the realities of defeat. They had been conditioned to expect savagery from their captors. Imperial Japan's wartime education and media portrayed Americans as barbaric, demons, weak-willed materialists who would inflict unspeakable cruelties on the vanquished. Military training manuals and school curricula emphasized tales of Allied atrocities, real and fabricated, to steel the populace against surrender. Nurses like Yumiko Arai, a 24-year-old from Nagasaki, documented in post-war repatriation logs, had heard whispers of rape, torture, and execution awaiting any who fell into enemy hands. The women braced for degradation, their minds replaying the horrors of the Bataan Death March, or the hellish conditions in Japanese-held POW camps where Allied prisoners endured starvation rates exceeding 30% mortality. Yet, as the ship docked and American guards tall, broad-shouldered men in crisp olive drab escorted them ashore, the anticipated brutality never materialized. Instead, a young sergeant offered canteens of cool water, his movements deliberate and unthreatening. The women hesitated, their parched throats burning, but the gesture pierced the veil of fear. What they encountered was not vengeance, but an orderly process, with medical checks revealing widespread malnutrition among them, as noted in U.S. Army reports from the period. The journey continued by rail to Camp McCoy in Wisconsin, a sprawling facility that had housed over 4,000 Japanese POWs by war's end, according to declassified U.S. military archives. Nestled in the rolling Midwest plains, the camp's barbed wire fences enclosed wooden barracks that, to the arriving women, appeared almost palatial compared to the makeshift dugouts and rationed existence they had known. The air carried the earthy scent of fresh-cut grass and distant farmland, a stark contrast to the tropical humidity and bomb-scarred landscapes of the Pacific. Here, the emotional chasm widened. Expecting communal degradation or forced labor under duress, they were instead assigned to clean, segregated quarters with individual bunks and woolen blankets. But it was the private showers that delivered the profound shock. A facility equipped with endless hot water cascading from gleaming nozzles. Factual accounts from repatriated prisoners, compiled in the 1946 U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, describe how many stood motionless under the stream, the steam rising like a forgotten luxury, their skin prickling with disbelief. One woman, later identified in oral histories as Sachiko, lingered for over 20 minutes, the soap lathering abundantly in her hands, a simple act that unraveled years of conditioned austerity. Interwoven with this astonishment was the recurring presence of a humble Hershey's chocolate bar, distributed as part of the standard POW rations under the Geneva Convention, which the U.S. adhered to meticulously for Japanese captives despite Japan's non-ratification. This small, foil-wrapped confection, rich with cocoa and sugar, symbolized the incomprehensible abundance of American democracy. In Japan, chocolate had been a rarity, hoarded for elite officers, or absent entirely amid wartime shortages that reduced civilian diets to under 1,500 calories daily, as per imperial ration records. Here, the bars were handed out freely, their sweetness melting on tongues unused to such indulgence. The women unwrapped them tentatively at first, the crinkle of foil echoing in the quiet barracks, a sound that blended with the distant hum of camp life. As days turned to weeks, the chocolate bar reappeared in meals, a tangible emblem of a system where resources flowed not from imperial decree, but from the productivity of a free society. U.S. production figures underscore this. In 1944 alone, American factories churned out over 3 billion Hershey bars for troops and allies, part of a wartime economy that mobilized 16 million workers and produced 96,000 aircraft, dwarfing Japan's output of around 28,000 planes that same year. The contrast deepened with each passing day. Expecting meager gruel, they received 3 balanced meals totaling 2,800 calories, matching U.S. soldier standards as documented in Quartermaster Corps logs. White bread, canned fruits, eggs, and even coffee arrived in portions that seemed wasteful. One auxiliary, Kiko, noted in her smuggled diary, later preserved in Tokyo's National Archives, the sight of cooks discarding uneaten scraps, a practice that evoked tears amid memories of her family's starvation in Okinawa, where civilian deaths from famine approached 100,000. Medical care further amplified the disparity. Penicillin and vitamins addressed deficiencies that Japanese field hospitals, strained by supply blockades, could only ignore. Army reports from Camp McCoy detail how the women's average weight increased by 15 pounds within months, reversing the effects of prolonged undernourishment. Yet, this benevolence clashed with their indoctrination. Propaganda films like Know Your Enemy, Japan, produced by the U.S., but ironically mirroring Japanese narratives, had painted Americans as gluttonous oppressors. Now, faced with evidence of industrial might trucks rumbling with supplies, electric lights illuminating every building, the women grappled with cognitive dissonance. Historical evidence from interrogations conducted by the Office of Naval Intelligence reveals prisoners expressing bewilderment. One auxiliary confessed in a declassified transcript that the endless hot water made her question the Emperor's assurances of divine superiority. As autumn leaves blanketed the Wisconsin grounds, the transformation took hold. The private showers, once viewed with suspicion as a potential trap, became a ritual of renewal. Women entered the tiled rooms alone, the door clicking shut behind them, granting a privacy unheard of in communal Japanese bathhouses where wartime crowding bred disease. The steam enveloped them, washing away not just grime but the rigid hierarchies of Bushido that demanded sacrifice without question. Recurring encounters with a Hershey's bar reinforced this shift, shared during recreation hours. Its sweetness sparked quiet reflections on a democracy that prioritized individual well-being over collective austerity. U.S. camp policies, influenced by the 1929 Geneva Convention, allowed religious practices, including Shinto rituals, and even educational classes in English, fostering a re-evaluation of ideologies. Post-war surveys by the Japanese Repatriation Bureau indicate that many returning POWs, including these women, harbored doubts about militarism. One nurse's memoir, published anonymously in 1950, recounted how the chocolate's richness symbolized a freedom that nourished the soul as much as the body. Winter's chill brought further revelations. Snow blanketed the camp, a novel sight for those from subtropical climes, as heating stoves fueled by abundant coal kept barracks warm. Expecting exploitation, the women were assigned light duties like laundry or gardening, earning 80 cents daily as per POW wage protocols. This contrasted sharply with the forced labor in Japanese camps, where Allied POW death rates reached 27%, according to International Red Cross estimates. The Hershey's bar appeared again in holiday packages from American civilians, its foil glinting under Christmas lights, a gesture that humanized the enemy. Emotional undercurrents swelled. Gratitude mingled with grief for lost comrades and devastated homelands. Yet this abundance prompted ideological fissures. As production statistics filtered through camp newspapers, America's 1945 output of 300,000 tanks versus Japan's 2,500, the women confronted the futility of their nation's war machine, crippled by oil embargoes that reduced aviation fuel to pine root distillates. By spring 1946, as repatriation loomed, the change was profound. The private showers had become a metaphor for personal autonomy, the hot water of flow of possibilities denied under imperial rule. The recurring Hershey's bar, now savored without hesitation, embodied the democratic ethos where innovation and freedom yielded surplus, not scarcity. Repatriation records from the U.S. State Department note that these women, upon return, often advocated quietly for reform, influencing Japan's post-war democratization under the MacArthur Constitution. Their experiences highlighted how humane treatment could dismantle fanaticism, with only a handful of Japanese POWs attempting escape or suicide in U.S. camps, compared to the mass refusals of surrender on battlefields like Iwo Jima. where 20,000 died. In the epilogue of this quiet saga, the steam from those showers and the lingering taste of chocolate whisper a larger truth. Freedom, when rooted in democratic abundance, possesses a quiet power to heal even the deepest wounds of war. It reveals that true strength lies not in unyielding ideology but in the capacity to nurture, to provide, and to transform enemies into witnesses of humanity's shared potential. In the vast tapestry of World War II, where ideologies clashed amid fire and ruin, such moments illuminate how empathy, channeled through everyday acts of plenty, forges paths to enduring peace.